There was a time, not too many years ago, when the name of a Lincoln product told you exactly what purpose it was built for and how and where you should use it. The town car nameplate remains the best example of this clarity. Before the stretch limousine versions of the 2000s became the image most people recall, the town car identity was attached to Lincoln's flagship Continental line of the 1970s. The fifth-generation Continental, introduced in 1970, carried Lincoln through an era of profound change in the American automotive industry. Over its long production run, which stretched through the decade until 1979, it adapted to shifting tastes, stricter regulations, and the looming presence of fuel crises. A major facelift arrived in 1975, helping it differentiate itself from its cousin, the Mercury Grand Marquis, with which it shared many mechanical components. By the time the last examples of this generation rolled out in 1979, the Continental had already cemented its reputation as a symbol of uncompromising American luxury, excess, and elegance. What follows is an in-depth exploration of the 1979 Lincoln Continental, a machine that epitomized the strengths, contradictions, and aspirations of its era. From its monumental exterior dimensions to its opulent interior appointments, from its refined but constrained V8 engine to its enduring cultural significance, this is a car that demands to be remembered in full measure. Perhaps the most striking aspect of any Lincoln Continental of this era is its sheer size. The proportions are nothing short of mind-boggling. In a world where compact imports were beginning to infiltrate American streets, the Lincoln stood as a rolling rebuttal. Bigger was still better, at least in Dearborn's eyes. The hood alone seemed as though it could swallow a small hatchback whole. It stretched out in front of the driver with almost ocean liner majesty, giving the car an undeniable sense of presence. Parking one of these in a dense urban environment was, to put it mildly, a challenge. Yet that was never really the point. This was not a car meant to slip easily into parallel spots outside cramped cafes. It was a car meant to be admired as it rolled majestically along broad boulevards, ideally with a driver up front and its owner reclining in the back. The front fascia was both formal and theatrical. A large chrome grille, upright and imposing, sat between hidden headlights that gave the car an aura of restrained power. Atop the hood, the Lincoln ornament served as a beacon of prestige. The sculpted fenders projected outward with a commanding presence, further reinforcing the impression of mass and authority. Painted in glossy black, the Continental took on a tuxedo-like appearance. Formal, timeless, and dignified. Chrome bumpers wrapped around the body with the confidence of jewelry, reflecting city lights at night and the sun's glare by day. Beneath, the Continental rolled on 15-inch wheels adorned with wire wool covers, their delicate complexity contrasting with the massive scale of the car. White striped tires added a touch of elegance, a subtle but important marker of luxury in an age when white walls were shorthand for sophistication. Moving to the profile, the car's roofline told its own story. The rear half was dressed in a vinyl covering, a material that was rapidly becoming a stylistic signature of American luxury cars. Small opera windows punctuated this vinyl expanse, their oval or circular forms adding a sense of exclusivity and refinement. These windows, evocative of private compartments on luxury trains, were less about visibility and more about mood, an architectural flourish designed to convey seclusion and privilege. Open the long, heavy doors and you entered an interior that could only be described as lavish. The cabin was a world unto itself, insulated from the bustle of the outside world. Upholstered in deep black, the seats were less like automotive furniture and more like well-stuffed living room armchairs. Their softness remains legendary. Few who have sunk into them ever forgot the sensation. The design theme leaned heavily toward the opulent. Wood veneer accents broke up the expanse of black upholstery, lending warmth and richness to the space. The dashboard was broad and commanding, its switches and dials laid out with a seriousness befitting the car's stature. Being a flagship Lincoln, this Continental came with an array of power features. Power windows, power locks, and power seats were standard, affirming that the driver, and especially the passengers, need never exert themselves unduly. Automatic climate control ensured that the temperature remained comfortable regardless of the weather outside. Practicality was not forgotten. The trunk was vast, befitting a car of this scale. Within it, a full-size spare tire was housed, no space-saving substitutes or repair kits here. The Lincoln philosophy dictated that when you set out on the road, You were prepared for anything, and you carried your solutions in grand style. By 1979, the American automotive landscape was being reshaped by new realities. The twin shocks of rising fuel prices and increasingly strict emissions regulations forced manufacturers to rethink their long-standing formulas. The days of effortless, unrestrained horsepower were ending. Under the hood of the 1979 Continental sat a 400 cubic inch V8, breathing through a two-barrel carburetor. On paper, its horsepower figures might appear underwhelming, especially compared to the thunderous numbers of earlier muscle car years. Yet horsepower alone does not tell the full story. What mattered in a car like the Continental was torque, particularly low RPM torque. And here, the engine delivered. With a strong, steady pull from low in the rev range, the V8 provided the smooth, unhurried acceleration that luxury buyers expected. It was not a car to be hurried, nor was it meant to dazzle with speed. Instead, it glided forward with serene authority, its long hood stretching ahead as if the car were clearing the path by its very presence. The engine was paired with Ford's venerable C6 3-speed automatic transmission, a unit renowned for its durability and smoothness. Together with power steering, the drivetrain created a driving experience defined not by performance but by effortlessness. On the highway, the Continental floated. Road imperfections were absorbed by a suspension tuned for comfort above all else. To drive, or better yet, to be driven in, this Lincoln was to experience the American interpretation of luxury. Isolation from the harshness of the outside world, cocooned in comfort, propelled by torque rather than revs. To modern eyes, the idea of piloting a car nearly 20 feet long and weighing well over 2 tons might seem intimidating. Yet, owners of the time often remarked on how easy the Continental was to maneuver once underway. The power steering was light, the brakes confident, and the visibility commanding. That said, this was no sports sedan. Corners were to be approached with respect. The Lincoln leaned heavily, its suspension tuned for suppleness rather than sharpness. But again, that was not its mission. On a straight interstate, the Continental came into its own. The long wheelbase and soft suspension created a ride so smooth it was often compared to that of a luxury train. Passengers could converse in hushed tones, read a newspaper, or simply recline and enjoy the passing scenery. Noise isolation was another strong point. Engineers worked to minimize wind and road noise, and at highway speeds the cabin was hushed, broken only by the gentle hum of the V8. For long-distance travel, there were few more comfortable ways to cross America. To truly understand the 1979 Lincoln Continental, one must appreciate the cultural backdrop of late 1970s America. These were years of contradictions. Economic uncertainty mixed with lingering nostalgia for post-war prosperity. The energy crises of 1973 and 1979 had shaken confidence in big cars, yet many Americans still equated size with safety, prestige, and success. Owning a Lincoln in this period was not just about transportation. It was about making a statement. This was a car that declared its owner had arrived, literally and figuratively. Parked in front of a country club or gliding through a downtown avenue, the Continental projected wealth, influence, and dignity. The town car trim level, in particular, emphasized rear seat comfort, underscoring the notion that many owners preferred to be chauffeured. This was luxury as defined by space, softness, and serenity, qualities that appealed to executives, politicians, and celebrities alike. The 1979 model year marked the end of an era. In 1980, Lincoln introduced a downsized Continental, responding to new corporate average fuel economy, CAFE, standards, and changing consumer tastes. The new car was smaller, lighter, and more efficient, but to many enthusiasts it lacked the sheer presence of its predecessor. As a result, the 1979 Continental, especially in town car trim, has become a symbol of the last true land yacht era of American luxury. Collectors today prize well-preserved examples for their comfort, their style, and their ability to evoke a bygone age. While values remain accessible compared to rarer classics, interest is growing, particularly among enthusiasts who appreciate the unabashed excess of the 1970s. Restoring one requires commitment. Parts are large and fuel economy remains modest, but the reward is ownership of a machine that turns heads everywhere it goes. The 1979 Lincoln Continental was more than just a car. It was an architectural statement, a cultural artifact, and a rolling monument to the idea that luxury could be measured in size, comfort, and presence. Its vast dimensions, its lavish interior, its smooth yet restrained V8, all of these combine to create a vehicle that symbolized the final chapter of a uniquely American story. In an era increasingly defined by downsizing and efficiency, the Continental stood as a reminder of a time when luxury meant never having to apologize for excess. Today, it remains an icon of classic American motoring, a car that asks to be experienced not with a stopwatch, but with an appreciation for comfort, elegance, and grandeur. To encounter one is to glimpse a world where the road was wide, the ride was soft, and the destination was secondary to the journey itself.